Here on the Jersey Magazine, my guest is a Jersey guy himself, Middletown High School, South Rutgers University. It's Darren Fenster. And Darren, good morning and welcome.
Jim, good to be here. Appreciate it.
We've been talking a lot in these first few episodes of Jersey Magazine about goals and setting ideals for the new year. And you have two things behind you for our listeners who are actually watching this on video: inspire and dream. Now, what a lot of our listeners may not know is you are a baseball coach in the Boston Red Sox organization, and you've also coached at the collegiate level and the United States Olympic team. So we'll talk about all of that at some point or another. But what's the biggest part of inspiring for you that makes the biggest difference?
Like I'm a coach today because of the coach who I played for at Rutgers and who passed away a few years ago by the name of Fred Hill. And so much of, who I am as a man, aside from my mom and my dad, nobody has had a bigger influence in my life than he did. And, understanding the impact that he had on me where, he helped me grow as a man through the game of baseball is something that, I really understood after I left Rutgers, as a student athlete, and then even more so after I left coaching with him for 6 years, where, you really start to understand like the things that are ingrained in me that he kind of put inside of me that I now really am conscious about in putting inside of the players that I coach. And, there's an opportunity to teach life through a sport. And that's exactly what he did to me. And yes, with the Red Sox, we're trying to produce major league players and players that are going to help us win a World Series. But, I've always had this underlying feel that while that's on the surface what we're doing, the lessons that we're teaching through the game are the ones that are going to last far longer than, any player's career ever will. And so that's kind of what my purpose is behind, what I do and the ability to impact lives of the players that I coach and the coaches really that I coach with. In the same way that so many have impacted me.
You mentioned Coach Fred Hill, the longtime head baseball coach at Rutgers. He actually created a position for you as a coach, right? And you didn't see yourself as a coach at the time.
Yeah, my playing career ended because of an injury in the spring of 2006, and it kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't thinking about getting released, and I wasn't thinking about what's next, what's plan B, and to his credit, he was able to see something in me before I was even ready to look. And when he asked me what I was going to do, I was 27 or 28 at the time, and I was just moving back home with my mom and dad in an over 55 community, which is exactly how I drew up my life. But he presented it in a way where it's like, hey, if you have any interest in coaching, I'll create a spot for you on our staff because I think you'd be pretty good. And if you spend a few months with us and you don't like it, then baseball's out of your system and you move on with your life. And if you do like it, you never know what's gonna happen from there. And that team in 2006, I had worked out at Rutgers while I was playing, so I had some relationships with those guys. I was way closer in age than the coaching staff that was there at the time. So they had a natural connection with me. And that group, headlined by Todd Frazier and there's probably 10 guys who wound up playing professionally off of that team. Like they made me feel like I could have an influence on them, that I could help them in the same way that so many had helped me. And so I really took to the profession, and had Coach Hill not, been able to see that in me by just having known me for as long as he did, I mean, I have no idea what I would be doing today. So that, that's one of many huge breaks that I got in my life, because at that point in time when my playing career ended, I wasn't thinking about anything. And, he forced, in a way, like presented me with an opportunity that forced my hand, that gave me this second life in baseball.
What do you think it was about your personality or your makeup that Coach Hill saw in you that led him to that decision to bring you on?
So I was an undertooled, undersized kind of player who got the most out of my ability. And a large part of that was I felt like I knew my strengths, I knew my weaknesses, and I was a smart player. And so what the combination of those things allowed me to do was it almost allowed me to play above my tools. And Coach Hill appreciated that, not just in me, but in like all of our players. And he prided himself on developing a program that played the game the way it was supposed to be played, that played winning baseball, that did things the right way on and off the field. And after my career there, which I was very fortunate to have some success, and I think the transition that I made from being recruited as the classic good field, no hit middle infielder to being in a starting lineup because of my glove, to my bat coming along, to graduating as the career hit leader at the university. I think he appreciated that sort of growth. And then I just stayed in touch with him over the years, and we would always talk baseball, and he would always want to know what we were doing with the Royals that he could use with his program. And so for me, it was the foundation was what I was able to do while playing for him, where he knew the type of player that I was. But I'm sure his vision of me as a coach was a result of those 6 years after I was finished, when we had stayed in touch. And it was just, he wasn't on my ass over every little thing like he was when I was a player. I was just an alumni. And it's funny how your relationship with a lot of your coaches gets better. And we had a great relationship when I was a player, but it gets closer when, you're not their player anymore. And I think that 10-year span from when I was a freshman to when I, finished playing, I thought we built a really, really unique relationship where he got to know me on a very personal level beyond just as a player. And, he just thought, hey, this might be a good fit for you. And I'm very, very lucky that he did.
There was another moment in your coaching career where something kind of similar happened. You'd been with the Red Sox for a while. You'd been in there as a manager in their minor league system, and you had been working with minor league infielders. And then they came to you and said, "We want you to do our outfielders."
Yeah.
Which really, I know, took you by surprise. But again, they must have seen something in what you were doing that led them to that decision.
I don't think there's any question about it. When you have a role open, and I mean, this goes for really any walk of life, I think most organizations would want to have the opportunity to hire someone from within for no other reason that they know that person, as opposed to going through an interview process where, in baseball, it may be spending, 10 hours with somebody, and you have no idea what a person's all about when spending 10 hours with somebody. Like, somebody could interview real well, but you have no idea what that person's going to be until they actually get, into the job. And I think over the course of, I believe it was 7 years at that point, this was 7 years of a lot of different people getting to know me, and in 4 different roles. And I think once they understood how I was wired, how I dove into things, even though it might not have been an area of expertise, again, like, this is someone who saw like some character traits in me, and like understanding what the role, what was needed for the role. And they saw a match, and it was presented as a way of like, hey, we know you might not feel as comfortable teaching this stuff as you might be teaching infield, but knowing how you really go above and beyond to dive into learning, dive into finding new ways to get through to players, new drill work, whatever the case may be. We know that you're gonna do the same thing, and it was sold as a way to become more well-rounded, as not just an infield guy, but an all-around baseball guy. And that's exactly what wound up happening. And I dove into a role where I was now the point person for how the Boston Red Sox were going to develop outfielders, having played 8 games in my entire career as an outfielder. So there was a lot of, work behind the scenes that had to be done, had a lot of conversations. There was a lot of trial and error, to be perfectly honest with you. I was very, very insecure, going through imposter syndrome for like my first few days in the new role, being like, hey, are these guys going to see me as someone who could actually help them on the outfield side, or just see me as like, all right, why is the infield guy coaching? And We had a great group, and like they were very willing and open to trying new things that we hadn't done before. And I think they appreciated the energy that I had when it came to presenting those things, and the creativity that, we used to organize our days. And I think once they understood that I actually, had a sense of how this stuff was going to play, and I had a little bit of a different lens, they realized it was just, a different voice I could help get them better.
What did you learn about yourself in that process? You talk about imposter syndrome when you realize, well, I'm not an imposter, but what did you learn about yourself?
That's a good question. I think the ability to like go outside of your comfort zone. I've talked about this, this experience a number of times in different settings, where if you go to a baseball clinic, and you're a coach and you have different options of different speakers that you can listen to, I think naturally everybody goes to the area that they love the most. And, for me, say it was infield. If I had three different things to choose from, I was going to listen to the infield guy because I wanted to become even more of an expert on the infield guy. And I think to be presented with such a really important role in the scheme of our minor league system and our entire organization as a whole, it was daunting in some respects when it wasn't an area of expertise. And once I realized, hey, I was not prepared for this in the sense of just sheer knowledge when it was offered to me, but I was ready to take it on. I think that's helped me understand that, things don't have to line up perfectly for them to be a good fit. And I try to relay that message, whether it be down to coaches or even to players when we ask them to try different things, how in the long run, like there may be a step back or maybe, a little uncomfortable to start, but our approach is for you to really grow in the long run. And like that really opened my eyes to my own personal ability to grow, in areas that if I had the choice, I wouldn't have chosen it.
Darren Fenster is my guest this morning on the Jersey Magazine here at 105.5 WDHA. A couple of months ago, you had written something on LinkedIn about how treat employees like they make a difference, and they will. And now, obviously, that can be transferred from the office, general workplace, baseball, anything really in life. You deal with a number of players, especially in the minor leagues, who, I mean, obviously they dream, and you have that word dream over your left shoulder. They have those dreams and those goals, but deep down inside that this kid really doesn't have a chance. There's got to be something else he's going to end up doing with his life. How do you treat that player as opposed to the five-tool stud that, and I know can't miss prospects, miss all the time, but there's obviously a difference there. How do you handle that?
So I'm very, very biased when it comes to this subject because I was that guy who physically, like, the eye test, I would fail the eye test of any scout or any coach. And there were a lot of coaches when I came up from, 2000 to 2006 with the Royals who treated me as if I was a player who was never going to make it. And conversely, there were also a number of coaches who gave me the same exact attention. They gave me the same exact time, effort, energy to get me better that they were giving that five-tool player, the first-round draft pick, the top prospect. And that made me feel like I could have been a big leaguer. And I think every single player who has a uniform on deserves to get the very best of every single coach. So no, like no two developmental paths are the same. So someone who may look like they may never make it, if you write them off, you're never giving them the chance to make it. So it may be a little bit tougher, and like, it may be more of a longer, windy road, and they may not make it. They might not ever even get out of A ball. But because of my own personal experience on both ends of the spectrum, where the coaches who wouldn't even care to know my name because I wasn't a prospect really made me feel, like, like garbage, or like someone who like wasn't a part of the organization, versus those guys who like made me feel like I was looked at as a potential major league prospect. So from my perspective, if you asked every player who played for me, I would really hope if you asked them the question, hey, do you feel like, Darren thought that you were going to be a major leaguer or treated you like you were going to be a major leaguer or worked with you in the same way that he worked with anybody in the organization? I would really hope that the answer is yes, because that's always been a very conscious effort on my part to not separate those guys based on ability and to make them feel like they do belong in a uniform. They do have a chance to become a major leaguer. And if they do have a uniform on, they have a chance. Like if you don't have a uniform on, that's when it's over. But as slight as it may be, all it takes sometimes is for something to click. And sometimes we don't know when it's going to click, but we want to give each kid the opportunity to have that point.
You had the amazing experience of coaching with the United States Olympic team a couple of years ago. And those games, some of them were on really early in the morning. I was actually on our morning show and I've got the TV on my laptop watching those games, which was a lot of fun. Pat Kiblahan, who was on that team, I've known Pat a long time and he's a great story in and of himself. But again, I'll go back to a question that I asked you a little earlier this morning. What did you learn about yourself through that Olympic coaching experience?
Oh man. I mean, that experience was the coolest experience of, my coaching life, and nothing even compares to it. I think, that environment gave me a sense of, common purpose more so than I've ever had with anything in my life. And it's completely different from, say, professional baseball, like the minor leagues, college baseball, high school baseball, in the sense that like you may have a great program who really does have that team environment, but there's always like that element of what's next for the players. So what I mean by that is if you're in high school and you want to become a major leaguer, yeah, everybody wants to have a fun team season and a successful team season, but on the player's mind, it's okay, what do I need to do to play at the collegiate level? And then you get to college and it's like, all right, you have 35 guys on a team. Some guys are playing, some guys are not. So the guys that aren't playing for themselves, they want to figure out a way to get in the lineup. The guys that are in the lineup, they want to get drafted. Your guys who are in A-ball want to get to double A. Double A guys want to get to the big leagues. Guys who have gotten to the big leagues, they want to stay there. The guys who have stayed there, they want to get to free agency. So there's always this what's next on a very individual standpoint, which is completely natural. Like there's nothing abnormal or selfish about it. And I can honestly say that this experience with the Olympics, the only thing that was next was winning a gold medal. And that was for every single one of our 24 players. It was for all 6 of us on the coaching staff. And then our 10 other, members of our delegation from USA Baseball or our medical staff or anybody else who was with us. Like you had that sense of common purpose that it was just so different than everything else because it was that strong. So not being so naive to say, okay, like this is what I've learned from that, I'm just going to bring that in. There are elements of that you could absolutely bring back to, different types of organizations, teams, businesses, in a classroom, whatever it is, to bond a group, but while still having those, those individual goals, which are completely normal and absolutely needed. But that's a strong force. And when you have that, we were not, we won a silver medal. I don't think we were the second most talented team in the Olympics, but we truly played as a single unit because of that connective bond. And that's the one thing that I learned the most, is that thing does exist that a lot of people talk about, but never truly get to experience.
Darren Fenster is my guest this morning on the Jersey Magazine at 105.5 WDHA. One of the things that we've talked about a lot on this show through the early part of 2023 is goals and resolutions, new year, new me, and that sort of thing. And Clint Hurdle sends out an email on a daily basis. And one of the things that he did, Darren, at the end of last year as we headed into the new year was, rather than set this goal, use one word as your mantra for the year. And I saw the 2 words that you have behind you. For listeners who are watching on video, they can see it's inspire and dream. For me, my word this year Last year it was focus. That did okay. This year it's finish, because I am notorious for starting things and not finishing them. So that's my word for the year, is to just, whatever it is that I start, I need to finish it. If you had to pick a word for 2023, what would that be?
So if you walked out of this room and walked down the stairs, right above like the first floor, I have the word passion. And that for me is something that I truly believe that everything that I've been able to do in baseball is because of the passion that I've had for the game going back to when I was a kid. And when you do things with passion, other people feed off of them. And if you were down in spring training and you saw, you saw me working with players, you'd think I was an absolute lunatic in some respects, with like just, the energy that I have, that being on a field brings out in me. And Coach Hill was very, very similar. I'm sure part of this was his influence on me as well, where, this was this guy, he was in his 60s when I played for him. He was in his 70s when I coached with him, and he had more energy than 18 to 22-year-olds. And I remember as a player being like, all right, how is this senior citizen have more energy than us? Like when he was bouncing around, like we were almost pulled into this force field of also being energized because he was this way. And like, I know that that energy came from just loving players and loving the game. And, I get excited when like a player has like a good rep on like a hand roll when he does something right. And it's very, very real. And I think when that's like how you're wired, and you bring that every single day, and there's something that goes inside of a player's head, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, where they think like, man, like I want some of what this guy has. Like this guy has such a love that, like, what is it about the game? What is it about this drill? What is it about, being out on the field that like this guy loves so much? And when you're around these guys like every single day, I think they really feed off of it, and they take on the personality of whatever a coaching staff is giving them. So like that's always been something that has been very, very natural for me. And, I truly believe that I've been able to do what I've been able to do because of that passion.
I've always enjoyed listening to you talk. I've seen you at a couple of different baseball clinics and in our conversations that we've had over the years. For parents who want to learn more about Darren, you can check out his Twitter feed at Coach Your Kids. Even if you don't coach youth sports, it's a great read. And again, on LinkedIn as well, you post some great content there. Thank you very much for your time. Best of luck this year. As you know, I'm a big Red Sox fan, so I'm pulling for you guys. Best of luck, and thanks for your time.
Jim, always good talking to you. Thanks.